We are live right now, broadcasting live from the Citizen Edge Facebook page. With
Live,
our
live.
Keisha Wall, Jasmine Wilkinson, and Simone Freeman. This is We the Motherhood. All right, so what we're gonna do, what we always do, we get started and we go to Citizen Edge Facebook page. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to Citizen Edge page and you're going to start a watch party on your Facebook page so that your friends can join us in the conversation as well as post their own questions, comments, or contributions to this dialogue. This dialogue is only as good as those who join in. So let's take a minute to get ourselves out there. It's Citizen Ed. We are live from the Citizen Ed Facebook page, also streaming live to YouTube. Did y'all know that? Streaming live to YouTube. All right, so here we are. Very good. Yay. Right now, broadcasting live. All right. Yay. Oh, it's 9 people watching already. Yay. All right, so I am Michelle Parrish, joined with mothers Dr. Chioma Oru, Yolanda Corbett, and the one and only LaJoy Johnson Law. With us today are our 3 amazing guests. We are so excited to be having this conversation. So we have Lakeisha Wall, all right, who I met through a good personal friend. I was so excited. Our first conversation went a long time when we first discussed your work. Also, we have Jasmine Wilkerson. Jasmine, is it okay to say PhD candidate Jasmine Wilkerson? Is it okay to say that, sister?
Yes.
All right, PhD candidate, doctor in the making, future doctor Jasmine Wilkerson from Advocates for Justice and Education, and my longtime friend who just dated us in terms of how far we actually go back, brother Simone Freeman, who was doing the work when we met and has consistently done the work and is on the front lines, even so much as having had taken some injuries this summer, last summer when we had so much what looked like 1919 happening in Red Summer in Washington D.C. all downtown. And so the brother is out there. He's on the front line with us. And these guests, we talked and we have these guests with us today because here's where my head went, right? So I'm watching Andy Shalaw's Peace Ball live stream, right? And it wasn't the Peace Ball, but it was Reflections. And he had, oh my God, countless amazing guests. But among the guests was the one and only Angela Davis. And during her dialogue, you know, she talked about this being like a really pivotal, because pivotal is not a word, pivotal moment in time. And that this moment in time was essentially America's third Reconstruction. And among the things we know is that our disability advocacy and the work that we do was never considered in any construction of America, right? So my question was, well, you know, if we're in a third Reconstruction and I have it my way, what do I want? So here's a couple of things that she said that I thought were interesting. And I want to put that out there. And then we can certainly bring other amazing things into the conversation. But a couple of things she said, one, that for the first time ever, abolitionist discourse has become a part of mainstream society, right? And so when I think about that, I sort of say, well, if abolitionist discourse has been able to be a part of mainstream society, then that means that other modified discourse or other alternative discourse that is counter to the colonial structure can also become a part of mainstream society. So that stuck with me. The other thing was that this was our time to recommit to our work as advocates, as seekers of justice and equality and equity. She said that this was a moment where there was a significant opportunity, and I'm paraphrasing, so if this is no quote, but this was a moment of significant opportunity for systematic, institutional, and cultural change. That this was the time for that to happen, and that this was all being brought about by a significant clash between the past and the future. So this whole idea that I hands down believe has been stolen from Octavia Butler about making America great again is really just all of it's really a clash between people trying to bring the past and allow it to live in the current present as well as push it into our future, but we ain't having it, right? So when we think about that, and we think about our community, we think about our specific niche in the community, and we think about where we can go from here. If we are in America's third Reconstruction, how does our advocacy look? How does our work look? And, and I know, come on, we talked about the representation of arts and culture in all of this. And so I just want to put that out there. And I want to first throw it to the mothers. Any questions we want to start with? The mothers being Mother Yolanda, Mother Chioma, and Mother LJL for president. Anyone? Y'all might be muted.
So there's so many thoughts, Michelle. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like race, disability, advocacy, like they all like intertwined. I think, just the crazy things that happened at the Capitol, some weeks ago before, President Joe Biden was sworn in, just like came into my mind. So, right, it's just like all of these thoughts, like came into my mind, right? And it's like, okay, we got a new president, right? So it's like, okay, maybe we can have a fresh start, but can we really have a fresh start? You know what I'm saying? Like what happened at the Capitol is deep rooted in some real racist issues. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like how can we really go forward as a country until we really deal with those issues and acknowledge, not only just acknowledge those issues, but to actually apologize for those, I don't want to call them occurrences, but just come on, like that stuff was a shit show. Racism is a shit show. And a lot of times it's about really not black, white. It's really about the color green. And it's about money. The United States is a capitalist country. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, how do we really come out of all of that?
Yeah, I want to add on. Can I pile on, or do we?
Yes, pile on, Dr. Oru.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my first thought is, so we want to build a third Reconstruction. Can we recap on the first Reconstruction, right?
Well, there's that part,
right? The failures of, what history has told us from that era. And in my knowledge, I'm calculating the first Reconstruction in the turn of the 20th century, at the time Du Bois was writing about, the Reconstruction and the impact on Black communities and what that meant, and the betrayal. When we talk about the political betrayal of white supremacist leadership and how that has consistently been. I mean, some people know about the Tilden Hayes compromise when, democratically, is it a Democrat? I forget which party. I think it was a Republican. Hayes was a Republican and Tilden was a Democrat. One of which, don't judge me on not having all the facts of that history. But it's a very critical case where there was betrayal, where one lost the election, and in order to win his vote, win his support, the elected president, Hayes, Lyndon B. Hayes, essentially sold out the promises made to Black people at the point of at the end of the Civil War that led into the 20th century. So the 40 acres and a mule, all those promises to the Black community were betrayed by back-end negotiations between different wings of white supremacy. The friendly, closer to the left, and the more aggressive, I guess, supposedly to the right. And both are illusions, especially when we're looking at power. So my thoughts are if I'm to frame it as a question, is have we learned enough from what history has told us. And again, and I want to just be humbled with the reality that I am first generation in America. I mean, I wasn't born in the United States. I'm not a descendant of enslaved Africans. So I do want to, make that clear that some of my positioning is really just from studying history, as well as in recognizing the unification of African people worldwide. But when it comes down to the granular, history that is passed down through our DNA, of what happened in Jim Crow as a consequence of the betrayal of what didn't happen at the turn of the century, at the end of the first Reconstruction, like I was like, that's not necessarily baked in my DNA, but looking at it, I'm going, man, look, and being part of the future of what's coming after, and my whole bloodline now being wrapped up in it. We need to look at what didn't happen then. And I'm wondering, did we learn enough?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's exactly where she was going, when she looked at it and said, now we got to this point and there's a recommitment that needs to happen. So let's get into it. Hey, Lakeisha, let's talk about, your work. I know you have experience, a lot of experience actually, in the district public schools. You are very familiar with special education, identification and evaluation. And then based on everything you've learned over the years, you have mapped a new plan. So can you share your story and where you feel like this all needs to go at this point?
Thank you. So my career basically began with having a brother who had a disability and watching my mom basically be guided through a system where she didn't really understand, and also take on a lot of advice on how she should proceed with her child, because he displayed all these different, behaviors and other deficiencies where, ultimately he had to end up being on medication. And I watched my brother turn into basically a zombie, like sleeping all day in school, all day at home. And because she didn't really understand the system, she didn't really understand how to regulate that. And when I watched her not be able to understand the system and let alone advocate for her son in the system, it always just had that soft space in my heart. I just never wanted to quit on him, because like I honestly felt like he didn't need that much restriction and support from the system of what he received. So as I went to school and I graduated in the middle of the recession in 2008, 9, after the 2008 recession, I began my career at St. Carletta, one of the most restricted schools in DC. And I watched how, some programming was done, and some things that were effective and some things that were not effective. And especially for kids in my community, I'm a native Washingtonian. I grew up in Ward 7. I watched how, a lot of our kids got flooded with IEPs and our schools were underfunded, and we didn't have the resources that other schools may have had that was outside of our community. So that was always, a thing that I wanted to give back towards. So I started at St. Carletta, and I began my work there, eventually working in some charter schools and even in the private sector, studying at American, where I had the opportunity to study at lab school and watch how things were done there, and seeing how, wow, kids from my community, could benefit from these very things that were happening. So as I moved up in my career and started at early stages, becoming an evaluation coordinator, just making sure that I am the person at the table that can not only, reason with these parents on the kind of level that they feel like, you actually are listening to me. You want to collaborate with me as I'm going through this difficult time with my child. Like, at that age, hearing that your child has a disability at 3 years old or earlier, coming from Strong Start, that's a lot to deal with. And one thing that enters into is some sort of trauma. So, the other co-founder and I'm one of the co-founders of Blooming Sprouts Holistic Learning Center, that we're about to open in Ward 6. we're going to open, we plan to open in the summer. But one of our main things is we want to address is inclusion for our babies with disabilities. We want to make sure that they are included in all of these quality programs. You know, a lot of our kids, our babies with disabilities are sent home, or these centers are not equipped enough or not educated enough in those areas to be able to support their developmental milestones. And that's what we want to do at Blooming Sprouts, is not only have a more inclusive environment and also ensure that our kids have access to high quality childcare, but also we're targeting trauma. We're more trauma informed. We want to develop our kids, and not just the kids, the parent, in a more holistic approach. And a more of a approach where we're doing it with everyone. Everyone is a part of it. And what people don't understand is when the parent is put through this type of trauma of learning that their kid has a disability and they may have to do things differently, or that it's just going to take a lot more time and a little more patience. They need support in those areas. And that's what we also want to support them in, not just their child, but we want to support the parent at home with strategies and different things you can do. So that's the new thing we're trying to do. And I'm really glad to be a part of this, because you guys are doing awesome work that my mom did not have the opportunity to have access to, or have a community like this to talk about some of those things that was really difficult at that time.
Yeah. LaJoy, you want to throw something in there?
It's just a quick question, / comment. Because it's Lakeisha, right? Did I say it right? I just want to make sure. Yes. Okay. All right. Yes. I just want to make sure. She just brought up an amazing point, just about the traumas that are happening, when families are finding out that their child has a disability, and you're trying to go through Strong Start and early stages and all of these things. But also, it's the other side of that too, right? Like the families that didn't get to Strong Start, that didn't get to go through early stages, and they may be later in elementary or middle or high school. And it's what services, can we provide for those families? You know what I'm saying? And then I'm thinking about the school to prison pipeline, where children, especially our Black boys, with disabilities, just trying to put them on that path, you know what I mean? And just how do we intervene with that? And it bothers me and it worries me that it's our children, especially our Black children with disabilities, they're just getting it from all angles. And I feel like with all of us here, and then everyone on Facebook, we have to make sure that we're there when they're early. We need to make sure that we're in the middle, and then we need to make sure when they're in high school, and then we need to make sure about after high school. So I just wanted to put that out there, because Lakeisha just brings up a good point about the early part of it, which affects everything else. And I just feel like we have to stand in those gaps, not just early, but just in all of them. So I just wanted to put that out there too, because I know some parents are like, well, what about my baby? He's in high school. I just wanted to show inclusivity. You know how I am.
Well, I will put a plug out there that that Yolanda and I will be leading the Early Intervention Cafe cohort starting in March. And you may see Yolanda Corbett or myself to join our cohort if you would like to join the Early Intervention Cafe, because we certainly have seats and registration available for you if you would like to join it. Because I do feel like the early part is one of the, it has an impact on the trajectory, right? And the more you can learn. And I love when we talked about the Holistic Learning Center, because, we're the motherhood, right? We know we got our brother over there. He's the fatherhood, but his son has a mother, right? And she's in the motherhood, and we're the motherhood, right? And when we look at the idea of, when we think about, if it's for me, for example, I always talk about just what I didn't know and what nobody told me, and no one seemed to be interested in telling me. They were perfectly fine, at least in my opinion, with me not knowing anything, and with me having stacks and stacks of paper in front of me that I wouldn't have enough time to read, not knowing when I'm supposed to receive my procedural safeguards, and how much time I should have had to review IEPs, and not knowing anything. They were perfectly fine with me showing up at the table ignorant and unaware of my own rights as a parent, and the protection my son had as someone who had been identified with a disability. And I just felt like that piece of the IDEA about the parent training is consistently left out. And what I feel like, and I only know that because I met these ladies, Dr. Oru and Mother LaJoy, who have educated me and provide. Dr. Oru, I got a bind of this thick from, you know, from things that she has trained on, because at the end of the day, you know, all families that are going down this road need that. And I really appreciate the fact that your approach is going to be all inclusive of the family. So when you do have your students in the inclusion components that might have a need or be in the path of an IEP, and then I hope that there'll be an opportunity to really converse about like how far Part C can go, because I do feel like there's not enough dialogue about that 4-year-old box. And a lot of families kind of want to jump right out there and go to a program, a public school, not necessarily knowing that it's a possibility that there may be other avenues available in the universal pre-K in programs like that to support that bridge range between 3 and 5. So, Jasmine, what say you?
Well, I was just going to jump on your point about how it may feel as a mom when you feel like, you know, your child got mediocre or less than services. And unfortunately, I think that's the story of a lot of parents, especially minority Black and brown parents. When you think about just our Black babies who have disabilities, they're a doubly marginalized population, right? They were marginalized initially just solely because of race, when we couldn't attend school with everybody else, or we couldn't attend school at all. And then you have your children who had disabilities when there was a time when we were locking them in insane asylums, putting the key away. So when you think about Black children who have disabilities and the historical marginalization that has happened, there is some trauma that has been passed down from that, and it continues, I think, to permeate the entire education system. So one of the things LaJoy said is, you know, how do we move forward? And my honest opinion, when you think about our entire system, is there is no apology, right? You can't. You have to dismantle it, and you have to start completely over. If the system was never built to service everybody, then I don't know how you can improve on a system like that. You have to just scrap it and start all over. I'll just say, you know, one of the reasons I came to be really passionate about this work is not because I have a child with disabilities, but it's because when I was in law school and I was in a special education juvenile delinquency clinic, I had a young girl who, she grew up in Ward 8. She had 8 other siblings who were living at home. She was 15 in the 7th grade. So clearly over age, undercredited, because she should have been in high school. She should have been a sophomore. Wasn't receiving any services. Her mom, and at the time, I got to be like 25, and this kid is 15 again. And when I was meeting with her mom said, well, you just make the decisions. I can't do it. And I said, ma'am, I don't think you want me making the decisions. I'm barely older than your daughter. I wouldn't trust me making those decisions, right? So I got that from that end. Then I went to the school, and it was kind of just like, you know, we just let her walk around the school all day. She never was in class. She never where she was supposed to be, and nobody really invested that time into her. They didn't like her because of her attitude. That is what I was told. She was known around the building, according to the adults, for cursing folks out. So when I first met her, we had a real conversation. I was like, look, this is just how our relationship is going to go. We will respect each other, and we won't have any problems. And truth be told, we never had any problems. But it broke my heart the day that I asked that young lady, I said, you know, what do you want to do when you grow up? And she said, make babies and collect a check. She did not crack a smile. She was not joking, none of that. And being that, you know, I'm not a Washingtonian. I'm from Gary, Indiana, from the Midwest. But growing up in a city where everybody's destitute, but there are levels to how much you're destitute, I couldn't see being a young Black woman who had made it to law school, made it in the eyes, I think, of pop culture. I couldn't watch a child who looked like me say those types of things and believe that that was their life trajectory, that that's all that they could be. And so for me, it was all about, if I left where I'm from and I was able to climb, then that means I need to bring, and I feel like I have an obligation to bring 1 million people on my back with me. So how do I do that, right? And a lot of it really is just that parent empowerment piece. the idea that a parent can walk into an IEP meeting and not feel like they are expert. Because at the end of the day, you know your kid best. You've been with your kid since before they were born, right? Who can tell you more about your child than you? And the idea that the education system just looks down on parents and doesn't value their input nearly as much as everybody who has gone to school with a couple of extra letters behind their names, that does not mean that you know everything there is to know about this kid. So you have to look at parents and you have to look at families as a partner. How can I partner with this family to provide that kid with what they need? But even in order to have that lens, we have to first look back historically around why we believe it's okay for our kids, the kids who look like us, who have disabilities, why we think it's okay that, you know, if you just get a sheet of paper that says you attended school, that's good enough. If you're able to work at the grocery store, that's good enough. And that's not a slight to anybody who wants to work at the grocery store, but every kid who looks like us should be able to do whatever it is they want to do, right? We all struggled in something in school. Disability aside, that just means you need to learn how to teach them differently. Teach them in a way that works for them. That requires some leg work, some creative thinking, and some critical thinking, which is also something we don't teach anymore. But you have to go back and fix that mindset and change people's hearts, right? It shouldn't have to matter that that's not your kid for you to empathize with the family, for you to feel like I need to pour my heart and my soul into this kid. If you're not doing it, then you shouldn't be in the position that you are working with anybody's child. And that's just how I feel. And if we all, at the end of the day, and I know that this may step on some toes, but I feel like at the end of the day, if what we're all concerned about is the state of our children and making sure they have what they need, then I can't step on your toes, right? Because we have the same goals.
Y'all heard me say future Dr. Jasmine Wilkerson, and you're doing work. You're looking for families in Baltimore still? Are you still looking for families to participate? You want to plug that real quick?
Yes, if you self-identify as a family of a Black student who lives here in Baltimore with ADHD, please get in contact with me. I'm looking to look at the barriers to academic success for Black children in K through 12 here in Baltimore. Also along those same lines, if you're a school counselor who works in the city, I'm looking for you too. Ultimately, I want to get to look at the partnerships between schools, the community, and families to see what we need to do in order to make this better, in order to service our children and make sure that when they get out of high school, they have what they need to do whatever they want to do in life.
Brittany Wade said, come through Midwest. Well, you know what I want to say, Mother Yolanda and Mother LaJoy and I, we were talking, but I think Yolanda, you and I have talked about this more times. And so this is like a bit of a turn from the topic, but the number of times that we have talked about like mother being the highest credential at the table, and that the credentialed people, you know, there's so much discourse around accepting the word of a academic leader because they have the title, and it has disempowered the title of parent. And so, you know, and we talked about really trying to create a campaign around encouraging our families to really embrace and hold their power and to understand and recognize their value in being able to make that contribution into the dialogue, that it didn't matter how many letters were behind their name, that if you had the one title, mother, father, you know, I mean, this goes as far as custodial surrogate parents or whomever, you know, whoever is the provider of the direction and rearing, that person has the power. And it didn't matter if they had an 8th grade education and no GED. You know, they don't even need the equivalency. If they are the parent, they have the power. And trying to really, you know, change this dialogue that tries to disempower parents, or at least this colonial. And Chioma a long time ago talked about like trying to decolonialize the thinking, right? And I said, you know, and it keeps coming back because now I see it so clearly what she was saying. It's like, you know, it really is so rooted in the undercurrent of the culture, in the way it's taught. And we haven't lost that fabric, despite the fact that I too, Lakeisha, I'm a Washingtonian, And I come from the chocolate, Washington, right? And so I didn't even know we had an integrated city for a long time because I also lived east of the river. And so, it's like trying to really get to a point where you start to really see like exactly what has been pressed down. So all these Black teachers in my community in Southeast all been taught under the same colonial framework to suppress me and my parents. And I was talking to my father about this the other day. My father is an organizer, or was an organizer before he retired. And he was just looking at me in my face. And I was just like, no, I told the school that my son is not going into the prison pipeline. You can't have him. And he was like, gosh, I just wish I had been there to see this. Right. But that's how I feel. But we talk often about trying to make sure parents get a sense that all those letters behind your name. I mean, I'm impressed, sisters. Don't get me wrong, future Dr. Wilkerson, future Dr. Law, mother, doctor, currently Oru. I'm impressed. That impresses me, excites me because you guys are young and powerful. But families that don't have that need to know that when it comes to the parent table and conversing on behalf of their children, that is disregarded. And you'll hear mothers who do come to the table, even with all that power, talk about how they have been just disregarded as a parent, no matter what credentials you bring to the table. So I hope you'll come back this spring when we have a dialogue just about this very subject, the power of the mother, the fighting mother, and the power of her voice. So, Yolanda, you want to chime in on there? Because I know we talked about that like 50 times.
Yeah, even in spaces like this, when everybody gets thrown around the letters and stuff like that, I'm just like, because that's not my story. I'm just a girl from the Southeast DC, born and raised Washingtonian. I lived on Southern Avenue, so I'm part of the Ward 7 crew. I went to Ann Beers, for those who know DC, not DMV, DC. I went to Beers.
One time for Tigers.
It's a difference. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, listen. I don't want to get distracted. My ADD is serious, but but no, I'm just a girl from the South side of DC, and it wasn't until I had children that I really got interested in education. You know what I mean? Like, I went through the school system, and I lived the dream that they push today, like going through college and things like that. And I went and, I saw where DC failed me significantly. And even in my adult space, I show my DCPS education jumps in. But, it's not to a discredit. It's just like your lived experience. It makes you qualified versus the degrees and stuff like that. Because one thing you can't do is you cannot make the black and white come to life without the lived experience. So, like, if you as a teacher, as an educator, I take my hats off of them. It takes a lot of patience and like self-discipline to be able to be in that space to educate multiple children at one time. However, you can't be in all spaces at all times. And also, you don't have the pleasure of being able to say that you know my child from inside out. I do, as a parent. Okay. And so that means that you're never going to be complete with being able to do your job without having me being a part of your job. So I always like to include, or always like to empower parents that, like, listen, it can't happen without you. Just because somebody has a PhD, MD, or whatever, all EDDs, DDs that come behind these degrees doesn't make them the specialist. It just says that a piece of paper says that I'm the specialist. But you are the specialist when it comes to your child. You're the specialist when it comes to your circumstances, and you're the specialist when it comes to your household. So therefore, they need you. So that's the starting point. It and all. Like, if you're not willing to work with me, then we're not working together, and then there's no need for us to have conversations. And until we get there, start there, end there, stay there. That's my whole thing.
And I just want to add something to that. Definitely, being a teacher at the table, I can feel it when a parent is like not comfortable or not feeling empowered. And that's what I'm ultimately there to do. So I always want to ensure that the parent understands that this process doesn't happen without you. Without your signature, without your input, it doesn't happen. So if you want to slow this process down because you don't understand every line that we're reading to you, that we're going over with you, then you stop this process. If you don't feel comfortable with it, then say you don't feel comfortable with it. If you need me to go through this every day with you, that is what I'm here for. You have to demand that from your schools. You have to demand that from your team. You are the most important person on that team. It can't happen without you. And that's what you must stand on. It's me and my child, and everyone else here doesn't matter at this moment, but you have to listen. So like, I love that you guys are putting that out there, because that's the most important thing. And like I said, coming from in a house of watching my mom drown in it, and my brother actually going to federal prison through the school to prison pipeline, it hit home for me. So if you can start there, at least be present, let them know when you don't understand, or when you see another kid's name in that document, how you require that, no, this needs to be done over. Because you said this another child. So this means that you don't know who my child is. You wasn't equipped enough to provide me the right reports that I needed. You have to slow them down. And if you don't slow them down, they're not going to slow down.
I've held up a meeting. They've scheduled me for a 1 hour meeting, and it turned into a 3 hour, just because for every moment that I felt uneducated or felt dumb, I've sat and I've had them walk me through it. They can't rush you through a meeting, and if they feel like the time is up for them, then you just reschedule. It's absolutely within your power to dictate how long it takes until you have a clear understanding in those IEP meetings or those 504 meetings. If you not walk away with a clear understanding, you're doing a disservice to yourself and your child, period. And it's their job to make sure that you have a clear understanding before you walk away from that table. So that's what parents need to know. Like, a lot of things that we've been brainwashed to accept and just kind of go along with, it doesn't have to be that way. And talk about third Reconstruction, change your mindset. That you are the starting point of how you're going to be treated, point blank, period.
You don't need a degree to understand it. That's what they're on your team as the experts. You, just like you go to the doctor's office to be counseled about your body, that is what they're there for, to walk you through this process, to help you understand it. And that's in the law, and you must require it. And they're not going to do it. You have to make sure that you keep your heels if you mom, or boots if you dad, on their necks, because no one's going to do it for you unless you have someone like me on your team. I'm going to make sure everyone is good, but especially my Black babies, Washingtonians. If I have anything to do with it, I'm all over it. But I can't.
She leaned up from the back of her chair a little bit. When you got to leaned up a little bit. That's how you know. That's how you know that you get fired up when you lean up a little bit into the camera, just to make sure we see you.
And real quick, Michelle, you know how we are. Again, we're going to keep saying this until we can't say it no more. To all the families, if you do not understand, if you hold up the meeting and you need more clarification, it is in your right to get more clarification. You can get training on the procedural safeguards. You can get training on the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. You can get training on that stuff, and it can be put on the IEP as a related service at no cost to you. Plug.
We need to put that out there. Yolanda, we need to put that on our social media action list, because I do think that is something that almost should be its own campaign. Putting that on as a related service, especially at the initial IEP, because that's the stage where everything in the stages of grief is just going haywire, and there's so much happening. It's almost impossible to digest it all. And being able to get that training, that actually should be mandatory. Okay, new petition, make that mandatory on the initial IEP. Brother, come on, let me ask you a question. How much women have been talking, did you say to yourself, thank you for you do something? You're on mute. You muted.
Trying to be polite. It's an honor to be up here. Well, I couldn't quantify that answer, but thank you.
I know I've heard you say in many of your other interviews, when you have heard that people are out here taking action and doing things to see a change in our community, I've heard you say, thank you for you do something. And so over the course of this, I said, I bet you that he has said, thank you for you do something a few times as he listened.
Oh, I said it to myself. I'm hearing it, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, absolutely. Particularly with my sister in the top, what's my sister's name with the emerald background, who just said that be there for everybody, the boot on the neck, all that. 8 minutes and four some seconds or something. But I want to give a shout out to Chioma. I didn't recognize you, Chioma. I hadn't seen you in years. I just got real quick. If it wasn't for Chioma, she was instrumental to my development. She was the person who's responsible for me going to the motherland first. I got paid to go. I spent the summer there. It turned me into a writer. I found my do something that's there. I found my do something there at the Million Man March, but she made my do something. She expanded it, beyond DC, and I started seeing the world. And I just owe her so much, and I'm indebted to her. And I just
that's Mother Dr. Oru for you, though. She's that way. She make you level up.
That's my girl right there. So shout out to Chioma. All right, so but being here with the motherhood, I'm all for the dismantling of this patriarchal society. I think the antithesis of a society ran by white men would be one ran by black women. So I'm here for that, clapping for that. So I'm all for the motherhood, the motherland, the mothership, Mother Nature, Mother Earth, and my personal favorite, motherfucker, because Nikki Giovanni said somebody got called a motherfucker. All right. And so I want to put some paint where it ain't, because something that's near and dear to my heart in terms of parenting and the state, because, Dr. Amos Wilson said that, we don't need more PhDs. We need more PhDs, and so I'm all with that. Because most of the people I admire were autodidacts, being self-taught. And I want to make sure that we understand the value of that real life education. But at the same time, there's an issue here in DC that actually was claiming the rights of parents. And that was B230171. This bill was a vaccination bill that was basically taking the rights of parents away to decide if and when their child would be vaccinated. Any vaccine, not just the new shit. I mean, anything. So now in DC, if this thing is passed, it's passed the council, but DC is a plantation of the white supremacist society of Congress, and so they have to rule on that. So we have a thing that we creating a referendum to clap back to do something, but they will actually have your child administer any vaccine, not only without your permission, and not only without your knowledge, but they will conceal that medical history from the parents. And a lot of people don't know this is happening. And it's called minor consent. It's a movement happening all across America because Big Pharma is trying to make all this money right now. And the real thing behind it, I don't, as you say, step on toes, but I got big feet. And that happens sometimes. And so the reality is the state is pushing this as a blanket, a warm comfort blanket to get everybody to feel safe to go back to normal. Let me tell y'all something. There's no such thing as normal. It's never going to be normal. All right. And let me share some quotes with y'all because I know the time is limited. This is from a statement from Milton Friedman that I wanted to share with y'all. And he's no friend of progressive politics by any means, but even a broke clock is right 2 times a day. For those who are not familiar with Milton Friedman, I'm sure you've heard the statement, there's no such thing as a free lunch. That's Milton Friedman. And let me just pull it up. I'm sorry, I thought I had it at my fingertips here. He talks about crisis, and we all know how we heard that crisis, never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, sometimes a crisis can actually be a benefit. It's usually to our detriment, but I'm submitting that this one is to our benefit. This is what he had to say. Only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. When that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are laying around. That, I believe, is our basic function, to develop alternatives to existing policies, to keep them alive and available until the politically impossible becomes the politically inevitable. And that is one of the opportunities that we have been afforded right now, because we all have a higher participation in our child's education right now, because we was forced to it by this crisis. So now, from here on out, it's never going to be the same again in terms of our relationship to our children's education, especially when we understand that, as Malcolm said, only a fool will allow their enemies to educate their child. And I will submit to you that the state has always presented itself as an enemy to the people. And so therefore the state has no longer the power to determine and dictate to us what is going to be. We actually are in this reconstruction, the first being, as they alluded to, following the Civil War, the second being the Civil Rights Movement, which actually, as James Baldwin would say, was the rebellion. And now the third reconstruction, I submit, is the decolonization of America, the dismantling of white supremacy. And we are claiming our power, and we are asserting ourselves. And we have to be cool with that we either break the chain, break the cycle, stop the bullshit generation. And that's what we are here to do. And so the last thing I want to say as a little ode of inspiration, we all are familiar with Martin Luther King's last speech, but most of us are not as familiar with his next to his last speech, which was actually delivered right here in Washington, D.C. on March 31st, 1968. It was called Remaining Awake During a Great Revolution. Okay? So whenever you hear somebody say, I can't wait till this is over, we get back to normal, they are not remaining awake. They are missing the point. There's, as Dick Gregory would say, stay woke, okay? But this is what Martin Luther King had to say. One of the great liabilities of life is that all too many people find themselves living amid a great period of social change, and yet they fail to develop the new attitudes, the new mental responses that the new situation demands. They end up sleeping through a revolution. And I submit to all your sisters up here that we are in the midst of a great revolution, and we have to assert ourselves. We are on deck. Everyone that we have loved and admired has gone on, is on us. It's on us. And what we have to do is continue to convene like this to figure out how we can lean on each other, because what we have to do in the final analysis is decrease our level of dependency on the system and increase our interdependency on each other. And that, to me, is the motherhood that's given birth to a whole new world, a whole new way of thinking, a whole new way of perspective and doing things. So I'm honored to be a part of y'all. I'm here for security purposes. So anybody, anything, I got pistol grip lifesavers. I know how to use them. And I'm here for you. Do not get gas at night. But if you ever need anything, let me know. I'm here for y'all, right?
Listen, I feel like I need a fan. I mean, like, not only did you have the nerve to bring the knowledge like I knew you would, but you had the nerve to do it in poetic cadence, because that's how it all began, right? The spoken word. Let me ask you, brother, you said when we talked, you said you had a new piece. Are you dropping a piece this weekend or doing something?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, as part of the revolution, you know, Nikki, Nina Simone said, an artist got to reflect the times they live in. So I can attest to you that shit done changed, because they giving me grant money to do revolutionary work. But
that's what Andrew said, right? That abolitionist discourse is now in the mainstream. So let's run with it.
Like, when have you heard white supremacy mentioned so much in the mainstream society? Like, that's how you know. That's how you know.
Yeah.
But having said that, yeah, we're doing a resilient together visual mixtape. I had the honor to work with Sunny Sumter, who's the director of the DC Jazz Festival, on her project called The Day of Remembrance. She had lost her mom to COVID, as so many probably have lost someone they know to that. And so we did a dedication to all those that we have lost. And she had all of these great art organizations across the city, from Washington Ballet to the jazz artists, submit a piece. And when I saw that and was a part of that, I was like, yo, that's cool. We're going to honor the dead, but we need to do something for the living, right? So I said, let's do a resilient together mixtape. It's a visual mixtape for the revolution. And we're going to put it out here and not just stream it for the online community. We're going to do a citywide tour where I'm going to take my $3,000 projector grant money and splash this up on a big buildings and screen it all over the city in every 8 wards, right? And we're going to start the launch on April the 4th at 14th and U, which was ground zero of the MLK rebellions on the day of his government assassination. And this weekend on Black Love Day tomorrow, well, actually, no, they pushed it to Sunday because they're concerned about the snow tomorrow. But you know how DC freak out over interest, whatever. But anyway, so we're gonna be at the Howard Theater filming our first segment, and I'm honored to be working with Malik the Dope Drummer. He's jive famous now, been all over TV. Tamika Love Jones Hall. I got so many people on the joint. Like Malik the Dope Drummer is going to do a piece in front of the MLK Memorial. You know, when MLK says that, I was a drum major for justice. He's going to bring some fire. So we have to have the soundtrack to our lives. And if you listen to commercial radio, you would think everything is fine. You would think the club is open. You would think that nothing's wrong.
In Atlanta, it is open.
Oh my goodness. See, Georgia.
That's good, brother. I think, when we were in our heyday as artists, it was a new renaissance in DC. And I love to see that the artistic movement has never stopped. And we see many young voices like young Miss Gorman and others that are really coming in and keeping the spirit of that work alive. And I'm glad that you continue to voice your experience through some manner of artistic representation. Can you drop a little bit about how we can follow the work being done at WeAct Radio?
Absolutely, but let me say this because I recently ran into someone, an acquaintance, because I don't use the word friend loosely anymore. But I ran into an acquaintance that you and I both know from that time period, and exchanging pleasantries. The cat said to me, "Are you still doing that art thing, their radio thing?" And I was so flabbergasted, I could not even actually respond to that accurately. You know what I'm saying? I just nodded like, yeah. But what I wish woulda coulda said was like, you mean like, are you still doing that parent thing? You know what I'm saying? Like that was the level, because what I realized is that for some people, it was just something to do. It wasn't a commitment to a creative way of life. Now they got words for it. Oh, it's the creative economy, or they got, they have labels for it now. But we was there forging a new path. And that's why we were so unsure. But I think that we all leaned on each other, knew that we wanted something better, because we're the generation that first rejected, oh, all you gotta do is go to school, get good grades, you work hard, you get a good government job with some benefits, and you're gonna be good. We was the generation that rejected that because our parents accepted that. We realized, well, hold on, and so we had to create our own path. So people can follow my independent media platform that's here to serve the community, the activist community at large. Is WeAct Radio, and that's ACT Radio. Do something, or we actually put some stank on it. Do something. You got to buck at them. And we are celebrating our 10th anniversary this year, November the 11th, founded on 2011 at 11 a.m., talking about the one-on-one. And we are on all relevant social media. We are a studio that we own, and the building and the land it sit on in Anacostia. So I'm honored that I have created an institution, because when it started was the Black Love Festival. It was an event. But now we have brick and mortar, and that's our growth. And therefore, our foundation is here to support everything that grows from it, because I think once you hit rock bottom, that is the surest foundation that you can stand on. Because once you lose everything, you fear nothing. And we should no longer be afraid. All right? Do something.
Yeah. Man, you took me back when you mentioned that Black Love Festival. I remember being on that first stage in Fort DuPont Park when I used to play poet out there.
That was the first one. You was there for the first. It was about 75 people there, and you.
It was fantastic. It was epic. We was out. I mean, change making doesn't stop.
Think about all the people that would roll with us. We had people like you, who's gone on doing things. Camilla Forbes, she's the director of the Apollo in Harlem, New York. She's doing great films with I can't think of the brother's name right now, but Between the World and I and all that. Raz Baraka was at the festival. He's the mayor of Newark, New Jersey. Like we like our generation is powerful, man. And we here to to uplift some of these young people.
Gen X.
Yes.
We the generation. We the generation. We the glue between the old and the new. Gen X.
There it is.
I wanna we got a couple good comments, brother. I think everybody is kind of shook. I'm gonna take a deep breath because you really brought a lot of fire and knowledge, and we appreciate that because I knew you would. That's why I asked you to come. But I want to say I want to go back to where you started in this conversation, which goes into some of the last few comments that came in about parent voice. But I want to loop back to the vaccination conversation because I know that a lot of families, it was so much like some people felt like it was perfectly fine. And for their child, to be able to be vaccinated without their permission or knowledge, and that it could be concealed, right? And that the government could bill the insurance provider. Oh my. And so all these things, there were a lot of people who were like, well, what's the big deal? And a lot of them didn't have kids. So of course they didn't know what the big deal was. And, because when I think about why they so pressed, like it's this, the one vaccine that they keep trying to give the teenagers, this HPV vaccine, that's the one that actually comes to mind the most, is this one that they've been trying to push onto teenagers for years. Not so much the COVID, like I feel like the HPV vaccine, I feel like the COVID vaccine is like an illusion, like, trying to push trying to bring it now, because there's so much fear about COVID and so many people want to go back to normal. So there's a lot of rush for the vaccine. I feel like they're using that as a cover for their real intention of really trying to get these other types of vaccines. And so, a lot of parents are rightfully concerned. I know Yolanda and had been on in many conversations. I know you joined, Yolanda, a conversation with the wonderful former mayor of the District of Columbia, Vincent Gray. And he had some comments. Anything you want to share from that meeting about where you think the district stands, or what kind of feedback you felt you want to expand on?
This is BS.
There's that part.
Then there's that.
I missed that.
And I hate to say that because I've had a great relationship with Vincent, but it is what it is.
I think that Vincent is just like, as it pertains to DC politics, it's nothing new. They're far removed from what the need of the people is versus what the need of the dollar is. So like when we talked about the whole vaccination thing, my question to him really was, what was the thought process behind that? And also, how did we end up there? There's a process that's supposed to happen where you're supposed to talk to the people, get the opinion of the people, represent the people that you're actually supposed to be representing, and like to see how this all unfolded, and then to be told by someone who is my personal council member that we're focusing on the wrong thing when we're talking about an 11-year-old child. I tried to give him grace, and I said 16, but the reality is that this is a child that is 11 years old that can have a conversation if the doctor feels necessary, feels that they are qualified to have this conversation about making a decision as to whether or not they can have receive a vaccination. And he was just like, you're focusing on the wrong thing. It's not really about age. It's about whether or not the provider feels like that it is necessary for the child, or the child can make this decision. And I'm like, that made no sense. So like, that's just my take on like where we are, where we've been, and where we continue to be in DC, specifically, that like, we got to start doing more research. We can't take these people because we put them in that's what we forget. We put them into these places of power. And then somewhere along the lines, like as constituents, we disconnect and like, they got it. Like, our Superman complex in our culture is serious. Like, we are looking for somebody to constantly save us, and that's how we end up getting got each and every time, because people that look like us hurt us the most. I can take it from a person, like, I know what to expect from a person that doesn't look like me. You know, like, I've been trained like that. History has trained me to be precautious of people that do not look like me. But time and time again, I lack that same judgment when it comes to people that look like me, gatekeepers that are holding us down. And so, like, that's I can go on and on about that. Gatekeepers itself. But yeah, that's what I walked away from that meeting. So, like, he didn't care. He don't care. He ain't gonna care. He just trying to stay in power where he at until his dying days.
But also they pushed it through right during election time. And I just thought that was so funny. I was like, see, this is what I'm talking about. The distractions of the crap that goes down when we're distracted, you know, because I didn't really hear anybody talking about that bill during election time, but somehow right after election, it passed. And I think the only, y'all correct me, I think the only one to say no to that was Councilmember Trayon White. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong.
It was two other council members that didn't vote on it.
Okay. Oh, it was other. So who did y'all know who didn't vote on it?
He was the only one that said no, but the other two didn't vote on it.
The other two did. Okay, so it was 2 abstentions and 1 no. Okay, and it still passed. And then now, have you all heard currently like what's going on? His name is completely slipping my mind. But it's a senator. I believe he's a Republican. You know, because DC is not a state, like all of our bills have to be finalized in Congress. And I think right now there's some pushback on it. I just cannot remember his name right now. But again, it just brings up this conversation about like, okay, that's not appropriate. It's just not appropriate. And again, it's like, what communities are really going to be affected by this, right? Like, what's going to be exasperated? And it's like, I don't see, I'm just putting it out there. I don't see a Caucasian family and their 11-year-old child facing an upheaval versus an African-American family with an 11-year-old child, especially, you know, if a child has disabilities, especially if there are other barriers and things going in, you know, going on in the home, and it being pushed to them. Oh, you can just do this. You can just do this. And they not even know what's going on. And so don't get me started, because I don't want to set it down.
Lindsay,
I love that you guys.
Lindsay asked you, do you know who was it that abstained? The 2 that abstained. Do you know, Lakeisha, who abstained?
I know Robert White.
Oh, it was 3.
Robert White was one of them.
Yeah, it was Robert White. It was Kenyon McDuffie and Trayon. But Trayon was the initial holdout, and then Robert White and Kenyon joined them.
And remember, it's election time too. So all those people, it's election time. So your turn is coming. So remember how you vote on this stuff, because don't sit up here and come back. Oh, you want to be Luke. You want to sit up here and be lukewarm because you want them votes.
And y'all can come down to any bus roads and locations to sign our referendum to get this on the ballot. That's about to happen. So I'll share it with Mickey in the group as we move forward. But those 3 are all parents of children of age, because this is children 11 and older. You know, and only one other person had a child that was of that age, and that was Charles Allen. But white people are predisposed to trust the system, and of course Black people know that we don't share that same point of view.
Right.
I mean, this is great, because I'm people that know me, like, I do not vaccinate my kids and they still go to public schools, and it's just one thing that I just disagree with. So when I heard it, that was a thing they were trying to pass for an 11-year-old. And as a teacher, I'm like, what? 11-year-olds don't even know if their bodies sometimes don't stink. So I'm like, how are they going to make a medical decision? And then why does a medical practitioner gets to decide if they can make an informed decision? How informed do they have to be? Because why is that
conversation even happening in,
you know, and
a school
and
setting?
then to see that, I just wasn't okay with it at all. Like, you know, that's a definitely no for me. And I wanted more people to hear about it, because I did feel like they slipped it in as well, while we were distracted about, about other things. But that's an 11-year-old making a decision. Then you're going to bill me for it. And then, like you said, our community is going to hurt the most, because they're always in our community with, these medical like buses, and they're in our wellness centers. And that's what our kids are getting medical care from, while other people are using like their private insurance, and they're going to private practitioners, and they're making decisions for their kids. Our kids, the schools are making a decision. And just like, he just said, like, we can't let the enemy educate our kids, and let alone let the enemy make medical decisions for them, allow a child to make a medical decision. I don't know about that one.
So
mess. And when I told Kimon, I said, I'm leaving. I'm getting out of the district. I can't be here among all of this insanity. And then he said, it's happening everywhere. You need to stay here and fight. So if I don't move to Middleburg, which I've been telling people for the last few years, that I'm moving to Middleburg, where the horses and the wine are. If I don't ever make it, it's because Kimon told me I need to stay here and fight. So listen, so going back to where we started, right? We said that I mentioned that I heard Angela Davis speak, and she talked about this moment right now being a clash between the past and the future, and that this was a moment where we could actually impact systematic, institutional, and cultural change, and recommit to our work as advocates and activists, and that this was a rare moment where abolitionist style of discourse had made its way into the mainstream. So there's a couple comments, and I want to flip it back to being able to decide, like, how do we redefine our work as advocates and activists and organizers? Because Lakeisha, whether you know it or not, you are in fact all of these things with your willingness to say, forget this, I'm out, I'm gonna make my own thing, to create the thing that I think is really going to be more effective than what this other thing is. And so Ayana and Andrea mentioned, make a couple comments, and I think it's so sweet, right? Because they say, we should have a parent advocacy group that supports parents in the process of the IEP. Welcome to We the Motherhood. But I do want to, and then, Ayana talks about really, sort of one of the things that was in the back of my mind when I initially engaged in the conversation that led to this moment, us being We the Motherhood, is really about the families who couldn't necessarily advocate for themselves, in terms of even using their voice, the parents who didn't have the wherewithal to fight anymore, the parents who didn't have the means, or the parents who had been, I'm gonna use the term, brainwashed by discourse that was counter to their productivity, and being allowed to believe that their children were less than, right? And so I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about what we're doing. I'm thinking about what is happening under Chi Born Free with the PAT Fellowship. I'm thinking about the work we're doing at Advocates for Justice and Education as parent ambassadors. And so I'm wondering, how do we frame any of this dialogue, like all the things that we're doing, the direction that we're headed in terms of trying to really make a true systematic, institutional, and cultural change, specifically in our niche community, where we're talking about families essentially collectively underserved families, right? Because we have the disability component, but we know that in the district, there's a significant overlap between disability, housing insecurity, food insecurity, education levels, and things of that nature. So we know that there is all of that has an intersection in this dialogue, which is why I'm so pressed to continue working on the intersection of disability, race, and the achievement gap, because every time I think about our work as disability advocates, and I'm more of a mother advocate, more so mother of students with children with disabilities, right? But when I look at it, it all compounds and goes right back down to the same place. And when we realize that there are so many moms who don't know how to use their voice yet, and we know that we have an opportunity here to really make a shift, how do we, what do we step into? So as we start thinking about our last words, I'm curious to know, what are folks' thoughts on what we can do to really use all of these platforms to make these shifts? And I do want to plug the PTI, because Wow, Andrea mentioned Andrea, might be Andrea. I'm sorry if I'm mangling it, but while she mentioned parent advocacy, Andrea, for
Andrea.
parent,
Oh man, now you messed me up. I don't even. But Andrea is
Andrea.
shout out to Andrea. Andrea, now you got me messed up. You got me all messed up.
I'm not sure if her comment, and if you're listening, Andrea, if you could expand, but I'm not sure if her comment was, you sound like she was asking for parents to support parents, and we know the PTI is there to support families, the IEP as well. So I want to acknowledge the PTI so we can plug that, so anybody listening who didn't know that we had a PTI, because I didn't until I landed there one day. And even after I landed there, I still didn't know what PTI was. And it's amazing once you learn that language, how you may be able to help another person. So I want to plug the PTI, Advocates for Justice and Education. I want to plug the forward thinking work that will be done under the PAC group with Chi Born Free, and then how We the Motherhood may be able to establish itself in the community to produce that parent level support. Andrea is laughing at us. So, to produce that parent level support that that we know is really the need for the collective parenting as a foundation to support and push us over to the next level. We know that that's necessary. So I will put all that out there. I know that was a lot, and I open the mic. Whoever would like to throw it out there first, and sort of lead us into our closing remarks. I know Kimon may have to bounce before we wrap. And so, come on, if you want to throw anything in there real quick as your closing remark before you roll, we appreciate you, brother, for coming.
I have a few more minutes, so I would like to have a sister speak before me.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. Who likes to go? Jasmine.
I mean, nobody got nothing to say,
I
was about to call out Jasmine. I was like, Jasmine, you haven't gone in a while. You should go. Dr. Jasmine Wilkerson.
Would you care to just share any thoughts on those ideas?
Yeah, I think just overall, and thank you for the plug for the PTIs, but just so you all know how even PTIs got started, and I'm not going to bore y'all with the entire history, but the bottom line is we got started because parents were sick and tired of being ignored. Parents were sick and tired of their children being in some building locked away from other students, right? You have a PTI in every single state and the territories because of the power of parents. Nothing happens, nothing changes unless the parents get sick and tired of being sick and tired, as your grandmother used to say, right? And then when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, that's when the change starts. That's when you start bucking the system that created all the disillusioned thinking that we have today that pours into our children, right? And then it begets the what I call, for every generation, the trauma that just is born from our very pores before you even teach your child their first words, right? And so what I was saying, what I've always said about parents in the district, that parents in the district are strong, they are mighty, they have a really loud voice. But what makes this change happen is collecting that voice together, right? Being able to speak and move as one. And if you have enough parents to do that, then you can see any of this change, regardless of the fact that the district is not a state.
And and just real quick, the PTI is Advocates for Justice and Education.org. Is that the website, Jasmine?
I'll drop it in the chat, but it's www.aje-dc.org, and we help families for free. There are no income requirements, there are no limitations, there are no nothing. You can call us 50 million times a day if you feel like it. Although LaJoy will be like, "What? Hey, how you doing?"
Like, hey. Well,
I'm gonna say, don't set her up like that.
I know, right? Like good morning. Thank you for calling Advocates.
I mean, I think it's so critical, though.
But really quick, also too, like if you don't feel like looking at it, I put the Find Your Parent Center information in the chat for Parent Center Hub. If you are in Maryland, your parent training information center is Parents Place of Maryland. If you are in Virginia, because we're in the DMV, Virginia, you are PEATC. So that's PEATC. It is the Parent Educational Advocacy Training Center, PEATC for Virginia. So again, DC's Advocates for Justice and Education. Maryland is Parents Place of Maryland. Virginia is PEATC, Parent Educational Advocacy Training Center. And for everybody else, please click on the link that I put in the Facebook live chat, and you can, wherever you are, just, well, a really quick plug. If you're in California or Texas, you're going to have a lot. You're going to have to go to the one that's nearest you because those states are so big. So that's my informational boring plug for the day.
I see Brother Mo got a book and came back.
Oh yeah. The last words, man. I got shameless self-promotion here. We just produced this book called Long Live Go-Go, The Movement. It's a pictorial book. I had the honor of writing the foreword of this book. I think that we need to always have creative outlets to engage our children educationally. So this has a lot of pictures in it, but hopefully they will actually read some of the words in it too. You can follow Long Live Go-Go on social media to find out how you can get a copy. And you can also visit the pop-up on 4th Street. Well, I should have the address for you, but it's right next door to the Union Market. For those who are familiar, the Union Market on the 4th Street side is a pop-up right there. It's the 1200 block of 4th Street. And so if you go by there, you'll see this in the window. Anyway, so you can pick that up there. But it was an honor to write that, because one of the things that let me show it again. Boom. See the Capitol right there?
Yeah.
Coachella? Yeah. And so the reason why I was asked to write the foreword for this is because we started some of the first resistances to gentrification on the cultural level. For those real quick, they had tried to first create an Amplified Noise Amendment Act that was supposed to criminalize any amplified music. All right. And it was originally targeting the artists performing outside, the gallery place and whatever. And, the settlers was moving in and wanted to have, suburban amenities in the center of the town. So they wanted to move next door to the biggest venue in the city. And when that happened, I had a summer youth employment program with Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Kids. And every summer I take care of the kids and pick out a bill at the DC Council's addressing and have the kids testify on something that was relevant to them, to their interests and their best, and as part of their education, because that's part of their media training. And it just so happened I saw this amplified. I'm like, what? And so if we don't stay up on stuff, they constantly grinding. And when we got there, they was all finishing each other's sentences. We was the only ink spots in there. And they were saying how they was being terrorized by the musicians, and they was fearful, and all you could just hear them, all the crocodile tears of crying them out in the river. And so we organized musical protests, and we was able to defeat that. And then, not to be outdone, they came back, and y'all know the rest with Don't Leave DC. And so this book chronicles that, because until the lions have their own historians, the tales of the hunt will continue to glorify the hunters. And I'm all for the education, but I want us to understand that education is mostly outside of the classroom. Ask our children what is culture, and you'll see a bunch of question marks pop up on top of their heads. Sometimes adults have trouble defining what is culture. And I challenge people that, because our story and our experience and our culture is just as important, if not more, than anyone else's. It's just that that's part of our transition right now, because we've been bombarded with what they have taught, who discovered America and, all that. And here we come in correcting history. So until the lions have their own historians, the tales of the hunt will continue to glorify the hunters. And I'm so glad that we have so many sisters up here who's telling the story. Y'all like the warriors on Black Panther, and y'all coming with it, So I support all of that. And let's talk more on how we can, again, decrease our level of dependency on the system and increase our interdependency on each other, which means we have to figure out how we're going to work together.
It's kind of funny you say that, because one of the comments from Stuart Anderson talks about is an invitation that's in the chat this next week on Thursday about the ongoing conversation about food insecurity. And one of my modes of revolutionaryism is actually urban farming. And I have a huge push on urban farming. I am a District of Columbia certified master gardener, and urban farming is one of my areas where I would really like to get more involved.
Well, we need some help with the Bundy Garden now because it's bigger and it's ours now. So I could.
Oh, brother, because I feel like being able to relearn how to grow. I say relearn because we did know, but we lost that along the way. But going back to being able to grow our own food and understanding the land, and Anacostia is a beautiful location. It's always been fertile, so you should be able to get great production over there. It really is something that is probably among the most revolutionary things that you can do is begin to push
I want to say this, like the whole Facebook Live on this. Sorry for me interjecting, but if children begin to be involved with gardening and things that's coming out of the earth, they're going to start respecting the earth. And they start respecting the earth, they start respecting themselves. And if they start respecting themselves, they'll start respecting each other. I think littering is a form of mental illness, and that is a reflection of our environment, of how we see people, how they feel about their environment, is how they treat their environment. But I can tell you when, again, back to the Marion Summer Youth Employment Program, of which I am a product of, when the kids first start there, it's only 6 weeks, and they got to water the garden. I don't get no dirt on my J's. Who I water the garden? By the end of the program, they're like, "Yo, you see the watermelon? Did you see? Who watered the garden? Oh, I go do it." At the beginning of the program, they had to sweep the block. Hey, I ain't sweeping the block. At the end of the program, they see someone throw some trash on the block. What do you think they say? After they done swept the block, they see someone throw some trash out. What do you think? I almost had to break up a fight one time. They're like, "Man, did you just see me sweep this block?" You know what I'm saying? So I realized that is also part of our education,
Yes.
Our re-education. And there's some value in that. And these are just real basic, practical things we can do to break some of these cycles. So that's my love for y'all.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kimon Freeman. We appreciate you being here. We support you. Hope to see you in yoga again very soon. Sorry I couldn't make it.
Yeah, man. I'm heavy limping for 2 days. I've been stretching things out. But I need that. I need more of that in my life because I got to stay in fighting shape.
That's right. Get fighting condition, iron sharpen iron. We thank you, brother. We know you got a role, so when you drop off, I will make an adjustment.
All right, and I hope to hear from everyone on this thing to ask me to help them with something, asking me to help you with whatever you are trying to do, and I'm here for that. All right.
Now,
hey, you're working on the next campaign. I thank you.
Yes.
There it is. I've been recruited. Do something.
Baltimore. And so, Jasmine, we'll hook you up with Kimon's people in Baltimore. There's quite a few activists in his network up in Baltimore. And so, with that said, now I saw you, Keisha, shake your head a couple of times during this last piece of conversation. Let me get your last words.
Okay, now it's working. Thank you guys so much. Like, I love this. I love what you guys are doing. I'm all for parent empowerment. If anyone on here needs me to look over anything, free of charge, of course. If you need any help understanding the DCPS system, definitely reach out to me. You can reach me at Lakeisha Wall at walleducationalservices.com, or you can also contact me, send me a DM on our Instagram for Bloom and Sprouts. It's Bloom and Sprouts DC. You can also reach me there. If you're interested in your child joining our center when we open before the summer, also, you can log on to our website, which is bloomandsproutsdc.com. We do have a registration form on there for you. Definitely forward our information to your friends or other families that may need our support, or even need my support for being in the district and trying to understand and navigate through that system. I'm always willing to help. Just let me know that, you heard about me through We the Motherhood, and I got you.
Yes. Collective motherhood, the power of the collective, baby. Let me tell you, thank you, sister. I'm so glad that Mother Shah Urban connected us. I look forward to a continued relationship with you and your program and further work in the community. We appreciate that. Last words, Mother Yolanda Corbett.
All right, last words as my ADD has taken flight. So I'm back. I just want to end it by further encouraging anyone who's heard us speak tonight, heard the stories and some solutions. Hopefully you gain some from hearing our conversation tonight. To just be empowered. You know, your voice is power, your voice is needed, and your presence as a parent, caregiver, or whomever you are in a child's life is like the first and foremost step to like making sure that the child has what they need. Point blank period. You don't have to be a degreed person to make noise out here. Like Jasmine said, if you anything like us in DC, man, you know, you gotta show up. You gotta show up in the streets and you gotta show up in these people places. So, you know, I always like to say, if you're not already, please be sure to like, follow, subscribe to YouTube. Michelle told us we got a YouTube. So
we do.
Yeah, okay. So subscribe to our YouTube. Make sure that you follow us. We all have our individual platform, but we are stronger together as We the Motherhood. And I'm so thankful to be here tonight. And yeah, that's all I got. My ADD won't let me be great tonight. So
yeah, definitely. We're working on. We actually have gone so far as to get the graphics on the YouTube. So now we're building the content, but we do look forward to being able to share this experience, other experience. And I told Chioma she had a long list of things that she would like to do, and a lot of it I want to record and make videos. So I'm going to put Chioma on a lot of videos to share all of her knowledge and information. I have a long list of videos, Chioma, that I plan to produce with you in them. And with that said, I will pass the mic to Mother Dr. Chioma Oru. Last words.
Yeah, goodness, it's been so powerful tonight, and at the same time, I think in an earlier conversation we had, I have been grappling and struggling with my own depression, and some of it is triggering around education and what's happening here and what's not happening. So while like on topic of the third Reconstruction, and I kind of feel like it's kind of there's a tension, a contradiction between this concept of parent empowerment, right? And all the history, like I love that Kimon conjured up Milton Friedman. Like if we understand some of the architects of the current systems that we live in and operate in, we will understand that everything that we're experiencing was intended for us to experience it. So it is in conflict, almost with this concept of empowerment, only if we get revolutionary. And so it's almost like we are at a crossroads. When I hear the concept of the third Reconstruction, and I think back to the first Reconstruction, or even what we call the second Reconstruction, and look at the consequences of what has happened afterwards, both in the history of our country, this country has resulted in increased oppression. So while there is this groundswell for liberation, as what was the Civil War, what was civil rights, what was Black power, what immediately follows is, again, the heavy hand of white supremacist systems, which never wants us to succeed and thrive. So I think we have to keep two things in mind, right? We have ultimate access to power, of course. No man, no woman can give or take that power. That is how deep mothering is, right? It is ordained, right? If you have taken in and brought life, you are ordained by the highest power, and you need no man or woman to accept that fact and reality. True. On the other hand, we live in a violent system that does everything, actually built its power on our oppression. The only reason, when I say decolonization, the original process of colonization was our disempowerment, right? The disempowerment of the mother, the Black mother especially, right? And so I'm kind of I'm stuck there thinking that every time we want to move forward, they kill our babies, they harm us, we are subjected to poverty, yet we are given this ordained power, right? So how do we break free ultimately, collectively? That's what I'm grappling with. I'm sitting with so many things, so many emotions, so much. And I know so many people are feeling it too, especially when we're talking about reopening the schools and how our children with disabilities are kind of an afterthought on that question, further reaffirming our, insignificance to our lives, right? Like we have no real power outside of what Michelle promotes, which is just disconnect from the system, detach, right? Sometimes you got to release. And I'm figuring out in my head and in my heart what that actually means in my life and what that means for the future of my advocacy. So this is powerful, this is always powerful. So I mean, I love y'all dearly, and I don't have like uplifting things to say. I'm just stuck in this holding pattern. So,
Right. But yet that was so uplifting. Imagine that. Still a mic drop, despite the fact that you said, I don't know what to say. There you go. And because at least 3 comments says, yes, teach Chi, you're right, Chi, we love you, Chi. Ain't nobody said, go ahead, Michelle, with your bad self. No one. It's you, sister. But it's interesting because I am a proponent of just pulling away, right? That's my end game. And I feel like there is if I could pull more families away from the system and just create a new way of looking at it. My vision is like some type of Professor X's school for gifted children, where, we teach to embracing the power versus trying to change our children, right? But at the same token, I get it, right? We have to operate within the context of the system. And I'm always reminded that the space from which I think is based on where I'm at. I'm older, I'm more established, and I'm close to retirement, which is going to give me plenty of time to homeschool my children. Whereas, we have a lot of mothers who are not in a position to reach their reliance on schools, right? So, so we have to operate within the context of the system. We do have to force a shift in the system while simultaneously, in my opinion, creating those outside environments that they can begin to move to and navigate to, that will, increase empowerment in the feeling of empowerment, but also shore up what they're missing. Because I got to tell you, like, I'm convinced, my son is on the end of the spectrum where Asperger's would sit apart, so to speak. And I would say that what I didn't know was that everything he knows, he taught himself. Because when I look back at his academic record, they haven't taught him anything, nor have they tried to teach him anything, because all they've been concerned about is where he lands outside of, where he goes next. He's had like 10 teachers. He's in the 2nd grade, so when I look at that, and so you're right, so, I think about, I'm with you. I'm sort of stuck in terms of how do we go forward. But to Angela's point, we really are at a solid turning point if this is really the new America, right? If we really are turning the corner, which because she also said that Biden Harris wasn't her choice, cool with it, because the reality is that it's still Biden. It's not Trump, but it's Biden. Okay, Mother LaJoy. Last words. I wasn't going to go there. I just didn't want to go there, but you know what I mean. Y'all know what I mean. All right. Mother LaJoy.
Why do I have to go after you and Chioma? I mean, y'all some bad pajamas.
You are our future of politics. You are our candidate.
And don't you forget it, honey.
I don't think the system is ready for the revolutionary vision that I have. And that's why God has me in this place now to get me ready. So, but anyhow.
You're ready. Preparation and position, yes.
As Mother Yo says, what is it? Point and pivot. Okay, you got a point and pivot. That's right, Yolanda, right? Isn't it point and pivot? I don't want to misquote. All right. Anyway, last words. You got, first of all, Citizen Ed, we love you. We appreciate you. Please put that on the recording. Thank you. Okay. We got to shout out Citizen Ed. We got to shout out Citizen Ed. Everyone watching, we love you guys. And I think just the biggest thing that we really hope you take away is that whether you are a biological mother, an adoptive mother, a godmother, a parent, or a caregiver, we just want you to know that you matter. And we want you to know that the power lies within you and your household in regards to your children. Do not let someone else or a system tell you otherwise. We know that the system is designed to tell you otherwise, but it's a trick. It's a lie. Say with me, it's an illusion. It's a complete illusion, okay? Because you have the ultimate power. All right. I wish somebody would tell me what to do with my child when I brought her into this world at 1 pound and 6 ounces at 23 weeks. I will shut your entire system and your entire school down. Don't play with me. Do you need Miss Law support? So maybe my advice to you all is that if you're having trouble with the school or the system, maybe you should tell them what Miss Law tells Abria's school. Do you need support? Hashtag it. Do you need support? And we're going to end it there because you got the power and we love you. And as Michelle allows me, I love it. She allows me to do it. All my ladies, Lakeisha, Jasmine, Mother Yo, Mother Michelle, Mother Chi. Everybody hands up. In the audience, everybody hands up. We. Put your hands like this. Lean into the camera. We are the motherhood. Hey. Hey, everybody. We'll see you guys in March. When's our next one? We're in March. I don't have the calendar.
I don't. Like, I was trying to get my paper. We're back in March. And if only I had my paper in front of me, because I just thought, wow, it would be a good idea to pin the date for our next one. But you could do what Yolanda said. You could subscribe and share. You could follow us on our Facebook page. And, we are growing a team of mothers. Some great comments that came in. Martinique said, where y'all been all my life? Hey, Martinique, we here. Going on. And then Stuart Anderson says, Ashe, peace be upon you. And our friends, Mona.
March 5th. I looked it up. March 5th. March 5th. I looked it up. March 5th.
Fighting Mother, right? This is our Fighting Mother discussion. So you want to join us in our Fighting Mothers conversation where, we're really going to get into that whole angry Black mother theory that a lot of our mothers in our community often have to battle and redefine what our fight really means and looks like. And, some of my personal theories on how we fine tune those edges so that we may carry on that work, with great nutrition and balance so that we can fight all night. Because one thing I can tell you about the mothers in this network is y'all get up and fight. When y'all finish right now, when we're done, it's 8:45. You know what they're going to do, Facebook? They're going to go back to another Zoom and fight some more. Watch. But with that said, thank you, everybody. We're going to log off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.